What's up, everybody? J Heat 414 coming at you with the sports talk as always. Just wanted to pay homage to the great Elgin Baylor who passed away. May he rest in peace. One of the all-time legends of the game. Doesn't quite get the respect anymore that he once garnered. As time goes on, we forget about the past. As an old friend of mine used to always say, when it comes to sports, people only remember what's recent. We quick to forget the past and write it off and think that it wasn't quite as good as what guys are doing today, unless it's your time. And then in that which case, you think that always the past is always better than the future. That being said, Elgin Baylor was the first premier wing player in the league, a guy whose game people looked at and tried to model their game after for years and years after he was in the league. Dr. J had a documentary talking about the great Elgin Baylor and how he modeled his game after Elgin and Connie Hawkins. Elgin played in the painted area, was a slasher, had the mid-range game, didn't step out to what would be three-point range in these day and ages, even though there wasn't a three-point line, and even though there were guys that shot from that deep back then without the three-point line, that wasn't Elgin's game. More to the inside, more slashing, and could play above the rim, dunking before it was called a dunk or popular. A lot of coaches thought that wasn't good basketball back then. But Elgin was a premier scorer, 6'5", decent rebounder for his size as well. Not the greatest passer, but a premier scorer. Dropped 70 in a game when it was seen as an unreachable feat until the great Wilt Chamberlain had his 100-point game. And even then, that still lasted for years and years until Kobe dropped his 81, which wasn't quite the 100 of Wilt, but was the first time other than Wilt somebody passed Elgin with his 70. So keep in mind, Elgin was a dog. Depending on who you talk to, they would tell you he's a top 10 all-time player, and they wouldn't be wrong based on their knowledge and their experience. I wouldn't quite put him in my top 10. But I think he's overlooked at times. They always talk about the great Jerry West, who he played with. Some people would say that's a toss-up of who was the better player between them two, even though Jerry at the time ended up playing his way into becoming the logo eventually. Elgin Baylor had a smooth game, and definitely was a guy who was revered in the sports world. A Lakers great, but a basketball great, and more important to me, a DC legend. In my opinion, the second greatest player to ever come out the DC metropolitan area and do it big in the league. So, can't say enough about him. If you don't know him, look him up. Talk to your grandparents about him, or your parents if they remember him. But Elgin Baylor is to be remembered, and we shouldn't forget our all-time greats because they paved the way for us for where we are now. Elgin played during a time where we get on guys now today and say the game's soft. I hear a lot of guys in my age bracket talk about the 80s and 90s and the physicality, when actually the rules made it able to be even more physical in Elgin's time than the 80s and 90s. And the rules do lighten up over the years, so there's some truth to that. But respect those guys from back then, because they put in some big time work, and they definitely are worthy of our respect, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for everything they've done. Check me out, Heat 414 at the Vault, JMU 414 on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Heat 414, but also YouTube. All right, holla at your boy.